And we're live, everybody. Welcome in. It is Friday, December 8th, 12:15 p.m. Central. Thank you so much for a special episode. This is going to be a little bit different than the usual. There is an interview that just dropped from Top Gear with Jason Cammisa from Haggerty and MKBHD, Marcus Brownlee from MKBHD, where they're going to be discussing the CYBERTRUCK and their experience. In case you're not familiar, these three publications plus CarWow had access to the first CYBERTRUCKs. I haven't watched this video yet, so I figured it'd be fun to do a live reaction to it. It's about 40 minutes long, so sit back, relax. This is going to be a podcast-style episode. I'll be reacting live. I'll be pausing. I'll be adding my commentary. And at the same time, at the end, not at the same time, but at the end, we'll host a Q&A session as well so that, everybody that's watching the video with me, we can all get together and discuss our thoughts about what happened here. This truck is getting a ton of attention. I've been following it for a really long time, so this is very exciting for me. Haven't watched it yet, so here we go. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens in this style of video. And do confirm for me in the comments that you can hear this. You should be able to hear it with no problem. Just confirm it for me. Here we go.
CYBERTRUCK, very simple.
I should do this first. Marcus Brownlee, he's a tech YouTuber. I skipped the intro version. MKBHD is a tech YouTuber. He's one of the biggest ones in the world. Jason Cammisa is one of the top tier journalists out there for the automotive space. And he works for Haggerty. And these two gentlemen here are the guys from Top Gear. Top Gear is one of the largest, if not the largest, auto publication in the world for auto enthusiasts. Okay, now we can go.
That's what the CYBERTRUCK is to
CYBERTRUCK, very simply, it is just a, your average cookie cutter kind of, no, I'm joking. It's a pure electric pickup truck. It's wrapped in stainless steel. It's a Tesla. It's got a ton of power. And it's caused a bit of a fuss online. Guys, do you want to help me out? What is the CYBERTRUCK?
I think it's the embodiment of America. Yeah, which we probably can't say here. It's pickup truck reimagined, unconstrained, right? This was Elon answering the question of why the pickup truck hasn't evolved in 70 years in terms of how it's constructed or what it looks like, and a clean sheet rethink of what it could be. And apparently a lot of people share Elon's vision about what a pickup truck should look like. And a lot of people are very upset by it. So makes for good TV.
Marquez, shoot. What's the CYBERTRUCK?
It is the most interesting vehicle in the world right now. It is a pickup truck. Yes, that's interesting. It is fully electric. Yes, that's another thing. It looks like no other vehicle or truck you've ever seen. It's made of things that it usually isn't made of. It has features and things under the hood that it usually doesn't have, and it's very different in a lot of ways, but yet still familiar, weirdly. So, it's a CYBERTRUCK. It's the cyber beast.
So, Marcus, I know you do a load of car content now, but...
So what's interesting about this is that these are folks, obviously, that are not in the weeds into Tesla as much as, let's say, myself and other people that follow the channel are. But it's cool to hear that they share some of the sort of the same thoughts about how it's super unique. It looks crazy, which kind of helps me sort of feel a little bit more comfortable about myself that I'm not crazy. So it's interesting hearing it from them.
As a car journalist, we come across these types of cars all the time. They're called concept cars. You see them at motor shows. They're made out of weird stuff. They're weird shapes. They're provocative. And then they're quietly swept under the carpet and forgotten about. And then another boring sedan rolls out, 3 or 4 years later. But for me, this is a concept car. Elon Musk and the guys at Tesla didn't read the playbook. And they just went, yeah, just make that. And it's not easy to make a concept car real and build hundreds of thousands of them. And that's why I think it's captured everyone's imagination.
I was going to say, at this point, we've all put out our videos about our experiences, and one of the most common YouTube comments that I'm seeing among all of ours is, "Oh, all of these things are different from the original truck. It's so different. It's so different." But the way I'm looking at it, it's remarkably close to what they were promising, especially the big picture stuff. Yeah, there's a windshield wiper now. Yeah, the door handles are different. Yeah, the tailgate doesn't drop down like a ramp anymore. There are things that are missing, and the price is very different from what they first announced. But it is still a remarkably interesting, ground-up version of a pickup truck that I think is worth appreciating.
I think you're right. I think they kept the spirit of the concept car intact, right? No one's not going to buy it because it has a windshield wiper, right? Let's be honest about that. But what I loved about it is we've all formed our opinions. I did too. Obviously we all did. We saw it on stage and either we liked it or hated it. There was kind of no in between. And then when I got to experience the car, and I'm sure you guys had the same experience, it is not what I expected. I expected a concept car. I didn't expect groundbreaking technology from start to finish. And so from an engineering perspective, when I just completely fell in love with it, regardless of how it looks or what I think about whether it's a better pickup truck. From an engineering perspective, the thing is genuinely unlike any other car on the road. And we can go into nerdy details depending on how much you guys want to talk about this stuff. But it's everything under the skin is from scratch.
Well, why don't we?
I think the interesting comment there, and by the way, I lowered myself a little bit so that you can bump up the volume on your end. I know the podcast is probably a little soft compared to my volume, so I lowered myself a little bit. Let me know if that helps with keeping the volumes even. Is that this was a common thing about the Cybertruck I heard so many times. There's no way this thing is real. There's no way this thing is real because it looks so insane. And so that commentary is interesting to hear from these folks because I heard it. I saw it with my own two eyes. And the fact that it is there on the streets, I think over time, because you still have to think that many people still haven't seen this car. So many people still haven't seen this car or even know it exists, that once it hits the streets in earnest, I think it's going to take a lot of people by surprise because of that super concept style look where 99.9% of automakers out there would be like, that is insane. We would never put it out. And Tesla's like, screw it, let's do it.
Kick off by just to give it some sort of structure of like what we actually did with the car. Because the idea with Tesla's idea, at least, was to only let the three of us have a go in it, but to give us kind of different stories and different locations, so we didn't just get videos that look the same. So what did you actually, Marquez? What did you actually get up to with the truck? Where did you take it? And
yeah, so I picked it up at the Austin Gigafactory, as I'm sure lots of other people's first impressions of it will be at. And this was maybe 9-10 in the morning, and they gave me the walkthrough. I asked all of the questions that I had right off the bat, and then they said, all right, go do what you got to do, have it back by sunset. I said, okay, well, I'm going to try to learn as much about this thing as I can between now and then. We drove it around residential streets. It got lots of looks. We drove it on the highway. We did a tiny little bit of, I would call it off-roading only because we were not on a road, but it was still not crazy off-roading. But just sort of learning the thing. And then basically started just putting together all of my thoughts in a walkthrough on the spot, sort of in real time. I will say probably the most interesting thing that we realized about it is it feels familiar, like just driving it. Like it's an electric car, it's quiet, it's a Tesla. But the steering was the number one most surprising thing about it. We all knew it looked different. We all knew it had these features. But the steering, which, Jason, you did an amazing job explaining in your video, I think is the most interesting thing about the Cybertruck, which I did not expect.
so yeah, Jason, you can go for it. It's a steer-by-wire system, right? So this is highly unusual. We've seen it in a couple of Japanese cars, I think, but like it's definitely a Tesla first. It's nearly an industry first. There's no physical connection between the wheel and the front wheels.
Yep, Nissan sold as Infiniti in the U.S. It had a steer-by-wire system in the Q50 back in 2016 or so, 2015. But that had a redundant steering column. And so when the computer was happy and thought everything was okay, it was steer-by-wire, but then it could clutch back in the steering column. This is the first time, I believe, any production car has ever been homologated for sale in the U.S. without a physical connection between the steering wheel and front wheels, which is...
Just to clarify that, what that basically meant is that car had two steering systems so that it would default to the one that's not steered by wire. So it basically had two systems. It's kind of like a hybrid where you have a gas engine and an electric engine. That specific car had two different steering systems, so I had to carry the weight for both.
Nuts. Until you think about it, and then you realize that commercial airliners are steer by wire, and all of our cars are throttle by wire, and half the cars sold today have Bosch e-boosters, which are effectively brake by wire. So Tesla gave me, to answer your other question, Tesla gave me pretty nuts access to this stuff. And I think the way they pulled this off with the three of us was really great because they gave us different access. I'd like to think it's my access to people and my follower account that got me the best access of the three of us. Because but it's probably actually local. I had it for a year. I designed the damn thing. No, it's probably a local home team advantage. I'm an hour from, not less than an hour from Fremont. But what Tesla very wisely did was brought me in, and I spent an entire day with engineers in meetings. So one after the next, after the next, after the next, and then had a big tour around the durability testing lab that they have there, and I spoke with the aerodynamicists, and we just got a really big tour of the car and the engineering facility and the batteries. And then we walked into the crash lab and saw a crash test happen live, which, I mean, you want Jason bait? I was originally an engineering student. I was going to be a crash test engineer. That's what I wanted to do. So this is the first crash test I'd seen live. And then I drove in a parking lot and on Tesla's test track at Fremont. And then went away and wrote the script, and then got the truck back for 2 days, one static and one dynamic of filming, which we did at Sonoma Raceway because A, beautiful, B, local, and C, we can close it off to people. As Marquez said, you can't go anywhere without a crowd around this car. And so the question became, how do we show what this thing does differently rather than just speak about it like we're doing now? And so, where the maneuverability and steering is concerned, we put it on a go-kart track. I had Randy Popst behind me in a go-kart, and we genuinely went for it. That was everything that Cybertruck had. We turned stability control off once and had a little bit of a moments, shall we say, a couple of moments, because it puts itself in Baja mode, which is 17 inches of ground clearance, and didn't want to stay on the ground. Didn't want to roll, I'll give it that. But we did that demonstration. We had it on track. We hit it with a huge dead blow sledgehammer just to see if the dent-proof stuff really worked. So it was pretty comprehensive access. And what I found was that I had to rewrite half the script. And of course we drag raced it. Sorry, that's the other thing you have to do with a Tesla against a Rivian and a Hummer EV, and it just humiliated the other cars. I don't understand it. It belies its horsepower number. But
so what's interesting there, what I just heard, is that they had to rewrite the script. I think Jason, which by the way is coming on my channel on Thursday of next week. We're going to have a discussion, I believe 1 p.m. Central. We're going to have a long form discussion about his experience. So we're going to dig even deeper in this. The fact that he had to rewrite the script sort of implies that they had some preconceived notions about how the Cybertruck would perform or how it would be. And he's talked about this on his channel on Haggerty and also on the Carmudgeon podcast, where he almost went into it as a quote unquote hater and he came out of it as a lover, which kind of sort of implies that the truck is extremely impressive, that it would change the opinion of somebody so drastically. So we'll see.
Cool. Well, I'm gonna get straight on the phone to Tesla and give them an earful because you definitely got more time than us. But no, it was a different type of access. So we traveled over to the LA design studio, and our kind of USP was getting access to Franz and Lars. So Franz, the design chief, Lars, the engineering chief, and we had proper time with them to sit down in the design studio. We had the original clay, we had the alpha prototype, we had the body in white, and we had the production truck, and just to basically deep dive and learn absolutely everything we could about the truck. And then we took it to the people. That's what we did, because this you mentioned there, Jason, with the reaction to this truck is like, I think I described it as it's like Taylor Swift on a unicycle wearing Lady Gaga's meat suit. Like wherever you go, people are just drawn to it. They're just going absolutely nuts. So we went down to Hermosa Beach because it's near their design studio. Literally just parked it up and let people just crawl all over it. And actually, there's quite a lot on social media saying, "Hey, Top Gear's making a film with the Cybertruck," because we went very subtle. It was all over everywhere. But great reactions. So we had one guy coming over. He was literally, so he was a barman, like in the bar next to us. He ran over and he was like genuinely like having palpitations. He couldn't breathe. He was like, and he says, my boss told me I couldn't come over, but I just told him where he could stick it because I've got to come and see this thing. And then he starts polishing it with this like rag that he's got in his pocket. And then you got this other guy who's, and then you get this other guy who I was like, hey, what do you think? He's like, nah, never see the light of day. Nope. I'm like, but this is the production truck, you know, they're delivering it in 2 weeks time. And he's like, no, don't believe it. No, never going to make production. And I'm like, okay. So even when presented with the production car, people still can't believe it's real. There's this other guy who's going to his friend, oh, it's a movie car. And there's a Tesla engineer standing next to him going, actually, no, it's not a movie car. You can buy one. And he's like, looks to his friend. He's like, nah, it's a movie car.
But also at the
So this is the point. I talked about this on my video 2 days ago. I forget what I titled it, but where Top Gear and Haggerty were comparing the Cybertruck to these legendary cars like the Lamborghini Countach and the Lamborghini LM002, which are absolutely insane looking cars that most people's reaction would be like that wow, this thing is crazy, I can't believe it's real. But those cars were 300,000 plus. They were extremely, let's say, exclusive, very hard to get. This type of reaction is being had with a vehicle that will start at $60,000. Once they get ramped up and all that good stuff. The cheapest one you can buy right now is $100,000, and then as Tesla ramps up, it'll be cheaper. But I don't think that's not being well understood by most people, because you can see that reaction. It's like, holy crap! Even when you're faced with the truck, people are like, "There's no way this is real." I think as these start to become more and more common on the roads, I think we're going to have a seismic shift in the public's opinion on what is possible with a vehicle. And it looks like the Cybertruck might be the vehicle that will do that will finally break this thing that all of us have been stuck in, that, hey, a car has to look this way, a truck has to look this way. And the only reason why it's looked that way, it's because automakers, that's the only way they can make money, because if they take too big of a risk, there's a potential that their companies will fail, and they don't have the proper culture to take something on like that, which is what Jason talked about in Haggerty with the 48 volt system and the 800 volt architecture and all these other changes that they had to make, the gigacasting, so on and so forth. It looks like Tesla is completely changing the game when it comes to what it means to build a car, and there's no more striking statement than a vehicle that when people see it and it's actually being produced, they still don't believe it's being produced, and it costs significantly less than $100,000 once it's fully ramped. It's crazy.
At the same time you guys were set to filming stuff, because I knew you were away doing it, there was all the stuff going viral on Twitter of the panel gaps, it's struggling up, a off-road course. What were your thoughts when you first saw the truck and now you've driven it? Like, what can we say to
Great
all the
question.
people in the bonfire that was online at the time?
Build quality? Do you want to focus on build quality?
Yeah, let's go to build quality. Jack, you first.
Oh, well, I'll go for I think, yeah, they obviously tightened up the tolerances quite a bit. You know, clearly, if you're going to give a car to media, you're going to make sure it's a good one. But, you know, this is the crazy thing about the Cybertruck. It's basically a celebrity. So every picture of a prototype was getting kind of twisted and analyzed to such a degree. But it's a test car. The panels don't need to be perfect on it. They're much better on the real thing. And actually, what I learned was the way the panels are attached, the way they work, the way they're bent, the way they do their job is totally different to any other just regular car panels, mild steel panels on a car. And so they do meet differently and they look differently, and you have exposed edges, and that does lend itself to look like there are bigger gaps than there are, but it's just how they're attached. What do you guys think?
Oh, I cut myself pretty
Did you slice your
severely
fingers
on
off?
Yeah, I cut my arm and ripped. A bunch of us had our sweaters cut. But here's, at the end of the day, the Model Y is the best-selling car on the planet, and it has terrible fit and finish. And I shouldn't say terrible, subpar fit and finish, and big panel and uneven panel gaps. The consumers just don't care. And I love that I got to praise the
The reason why that he's doing that is because MKBHD Marquez said this in one of his previous podcasts, where he's like, there's people just don't seem to care about this. You know, as somebody who's owned Tesla since 2016, and I've made this criticism in the past. Yeah, their fit and finish is not the best. It definitely isn't. Some of the models squeak and rattle. The panels aren't perfect. But I think what most people don't understand when they're saying that's the end all be all thing as to why Teslas are built like crap is that that's not really the case. They've shifted the focus away from being perfectionist when it comes to the superficial, and Tesla seems to be much more perfectionist when it comes to the engineering and the drive system and the driving experience and the handling and the acceleration and the safety, the things that actually matter, right? And I think over time, as Tesla actually has competition, that's the kind of stuff they'll hone into. They'll really get freaking perfect panel gaps. But it's clear that that doesn't even need to be a priority, even though some people are very upset about that, which they have every right to be, because every single person has their own preference and every single person should be entitled to their own opinion when it comes to vehicles. But it clearly doesn't matter exactly because of that point, because Tesla's going to sell every car it can make regardless, especially as they go down the cost curve. Shout out Marquez.
Marquez, it looks to the skies.
Oh, I just wish everyone, look, I get it. It's fun to make fun of. I mean, a good friend of mine had a Tesla Model 3 with a panel gaps license plate, you know, just to mess with everyone. But it's really not relevant when you understand how many different things Tesla invented in producing this car. The last thing anyone is going to care about is an uneven panel gap. However, wear protective clothing because it's sharp.
But Marquez, you live in Twitter and in the digital world and deal with the spiky end of the tech industry and Tesla fans more than anyone else. What did you think going into it, and were you ready for war?
I was ready to be underwhelmed, but I went into it trying to keep a totally open mind. And I think, Jason, what you're saying about panel gaps is so true. And I've said that I've gotten like flamed online for this take, but it's real. The easiest way to hate on something that you weren't going to buy anyway is to just complain about it in the comment section. And the panel gaps are an easy target. But I also don't think that most people who genuinely do care about panel gaps were going to buy something like this anyway. I think people who compare the tiny things about materials and fit and finish are comparing it to their other $100,000 vehicles, where a lot of people aspire to a Tesla or Model Y or a Cybertruck, have never used a $100,000 vehicle, and the other things about this truck that are innovative and interesting are the reason why they're getting it, and they will happily accept slight differences in fit and finish.
Exactly.
I did notice the front was kind of sharp. I poked it with my finger. It was surprisingly sharp. There really aren't very many curves on the thing. But yeah, I found it built well. It was the one truck that I drove. I saw a couple others. They were built fine. It's built like a Tesla. I was pulling on the upholstery. It was a little bit loose. That's just the way they are at this point. That's you know, if you're not willing to deal with that, then don't buy it. But yeah, there are a lot of things about this truck that are way more interesting to me anyway than the distance between some of the.
Well, I know. Let's hit on that straight away. What are the interesting bits? Let's take it elsewhere. And yeah, what grabbed you straight away?
Okay, so the steering, obviously, that's like top of my list. I was most surprised by it, and I found it really fun to try to get used to it in the couple hours that I was using it. Also, the hilarious acceleration. It doesn't really feel like it makes any sense. I'm used to very fast vehicles. I wasn't expecting to be surprised by the acceleration of what's basically a dump truck. So shout out to that. And then a bunch of the electronic bits, the fact that they surprised us with the 800 volt architecture, and they surprised us with the bidirectional charging and 11 kilowatt, you know, potentially backing up your entire house with the truck. They surprised us with a lot of these little things. The UI seemed very smooth. I didn't get an answer because I forgot to ask, but it felt like the screen was running at over 60 hertz, which would be a first for what I've seen in car entertainment systems. It was very, very smooth. I stood on the tonneau cover. They told me it could support a lot more weight than just me. So the thing is like a vault. It's very safe. It's great. I mean, a lot of the things that people buy something like an R1T or an F-150 Lightning for, this is going to be just as good at those things.
Can I just pick you up on the steering though? Because I totally agree. I think that their thinking behind the steering is spot on. So traditional trucks, quite ponderous steering, lots of slack around the sort of dead ahead. And they've gone, let's just remove all of that. You don't have to take your hands off the wheel, 170 degrees in each direction. We'll make it super direct, four-wheel steering, kind of tightens up the turning circle. And I get, if you want to make a truck very unlike other trucks, this is a great way to go about it. And also it's Tesla, so a steer-by-wire system is like a great tech story for them to tell, and there's other benefits as well. I just felt at a low speed, it was like, you talked about trying to get used to it, Marcus. We had 2 days. I couldn't get used to it. It was too pointy. It was too alert. It just felt, just too sort of flighty, if you like. Darty at low speeds. I just wanted it to chill out. And also there wasn't, you couldn't change the setting because you've got this sort of continuously variable ratio thing going on, which means the computer decides how fast you're going, how sharp the turn is, and how much ratio to give you. When we got a bit.
Two thoughts there before I let him go. Keep going here. So I think what's interesting about that commentary is that they should be able to, I believe, and somebody correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, if it's a computer that's deciding how quickly the wheels turn when you put in an input in the steering wheel, theoretically they should be able to adjust the input and magnify the closer you get to, let's say, full wheel lock, so that the first maybe like 30 degrees is much smoother, and then you get exponentially more turn the deeper you go. Theoretically, that should fix some of that. I'd be curious to see if that is a legitimate concern from most drivers, because it seems like Jason and Marquez were able to get used to it. The gentleman from Top Gear looks like he still had issues with it to begin with. But I think the overarching story here is that the Cybertruck is going to become a much easier truck to drive, I think, than most people realize. What I hear from a lot of people, I was talking to my wife about this earlier today, as I'm trying to convince her to just let me get the damn thing as soon as possible, is that, hey, listen, I think you're going to be surprised at how easy this thing's going to be to drive. Because her big concern is it's too big. I'm sort of afraid to handle this huge car. But from all the reviews and all the commentary I'm hearing, as somebody that really loves to drive and has been experienced with driving for a while, is that it's going to be one of those things where it's going to surprise you at how easy it is to drive because of that quick maneuverability. So curious to see if this translates. I'm dying to get my hands behind a Cybertruck so I can put my wife behind the steering wheel and see the steering wheel and see how she reacts to it. But that's what my gut says. I think people are going to be very surprised by how easy it is to drive, which theoretically should dramatically improve its market for people that are willing to purchase the car.
Quicker, and we went up into the canyon roads and stuff. It really relaxed, and I really liked it. It felt really natural. You could sort of carve about in the corners, but at low speeds I was like, I just calmed down. And obviously the engineers, they said, oh well, that's just the initial steering tune. We'll flash it over the air, and we'll give you like options later.
There you
go. I suppose we'll see, basically.
So interestingly enough, I drove two different Cybertrucks with two different states of tune. And the first one was at Fremont, and it was way too gainy. So the system can, just for those who haven't driven the car, because there's no connection between the steering wheel, it's just got a bunch of sensors in it, and the front and rear wheels, the computer looks at your input and then decides how much steering to give you. So everything is software tuning at that point. And so you're at 6-to-1 steering ratio at lower speeds, 4 or 3-to-1 at the very limits, and then 16-to-1-ish at normal speeds. So it's quick steering even at normal speeds, but it's something we've never seen before at parking lot speeds. And the first one I drove was just way too much. I just kept darting everywhere and couldn't figure out how to get the thing in a spot. They did reflash it based on some of the feedback that they had gotten, and it was much better the second one that I drove. The crazy thing to me is I lapped that thing around a racetrack for the better part of a day just in filming. This was not about really sliding it around. And it wound up being perfectly intuitive at those speeds. And then at low speeds, I thought, it's a little bit too gainy. And then I got into a Rivian. And I went to go back out of the parking spot, and I was like, like it's 4 turns lock to lock. And then the lightning was even worse. And I thought, okay, there is a happy medium. I think they might be on the aggressive side at low speeds, but the reality is there should be a very easy slider that they can make. They're like, I want super fast steering, I want super slow steering, because it's software. And hopefully they will do that.
Yeah, because to me,
What's super interesting there is that I remember when EVs first came out, or they're still coming out, and the biggest feedback I would get from people that experienced, say, my car for the first time was the one pedal driving, where you don't have to really use the brake. It's the throttle input which kind of dictates how quick or how quick you accelerate and slow down, because once you lift your foot from the pedal, the car automatically starts braking because it's regenerating its battery by putting the motors backwards. It's like downshifting in a car. And that was very jarring for people at first. It sounds like the steering, now we're having the same conversation where there might be an adjustment period for people, but just like the one pedal driving, the regenerative braking, Tesla would allow you to sort of adjust how heavy or not heavy it would be until people got used to it. Sounds like the steering is going to be the same exact thing. You're going to have the same exact mechanism where people are going to probably take some time to get used to it. But once people get used to it, like myself with the one pedal driving, when I get into a gas car and I have to use the brake, when I take my foot off the gas pedal, I'm like, where's this car going? This thing looks like it's never going to stop. And then I have to like ram the freaking, it feels a lot more archaic when you move from, say, one pedal driving to a gas car. And I think the steering, it sounds like you're going to have a similar type of reaction where you're going to go from feeling, it's just going to take some adjustment, some getting used to, but then you're going to feel like, oh my God, like, why don't I have this? I miss it. So we'll see if more people feel like that. But thus far, Jason is somebody that does phenomenal work. And hearing him say that is telling.
not driving it, from what you explained, Jack, it sounded like the worst part of a super fast, Ferrari rack, as well as the old Lamborghini variable steering as well, which none of us got on with at the same time. So,
but it's different to a super sports car, which is trying to give you feel and feedback. This is just trying to make a big 3-ton plus truck like super maneuverable at low speeds. So I like what they're trying to achieve. Actually, I wasn't driving a Rivian and an F-150 Lightning back to back, but that would have been really interesting.
Let me tell you, on the go-kart course, though,
I just love
that was, sorry to interrupt, the guy who's responsible for the go-kart course is like, you are never going to make it around that track. There's no way, no how, no. He was adamant there was no chance. And at the end of the pit out, there's about 120-degree hairpin right to get on the track. And he's like, that's going to be a 12-point turn. You're going to have to do it at walking speed. And I said, okay. And then lit up all four wheels, left the pit, and then slid it right through there, never even made it to full lock. And the guy's eyes were like, what the did I just see? Oh my, like it is genuinely, the maneuverability from it is something that I wouldn't have expected actually would work. But you're right. I mean, there's always optimization to be had in tuning.
Yeah. And that the big part of that as well is the fact that it's this monocoque, right? So you got the steel monocoque with the panels bolted on the outside. So with traditional trucks, you hit a bump, you get this big like wobble and shudder through the whole thing, and then But here it's just super stiff. You just don't get that. It feels like a car when you turn in and you got some speed.
Does this also make the yoke a bit more usable? I assume it's got a yoke.
Oh no, it's a Squircle.
Ah,
yeah. How'd you get on with the Squircle?
I thought it was fine. I like
Squircle, just for those that are not familiar, it's basically a steering wheel that's shaped like a square. That's kind of a yoke, but it has the top and the bottom. So it's just think of it as a steering wheel that is a little bit wider and the top and the bottom are flat.
I drove the F-150 Lightning to the studio, so I did the back-to-back as well, and I just have this muscle memory of like, oh, I'm about to make this big turn. Let me just grab the top of the wheel and get ready to do like hand over hand. You simply do not have to do that at all in this car. So your hands are on the side the entire time. So it is a full wheel if you really want to, but I never grabbed the top of the wheel. I was just end to end like this. So it was easier to do. Yeah, we had a couple turnaround moments because we were shooting the trucks back to back, and it was like 6-point turn for the F-150 and then just full lock, swivel it around on the CYBERTRUCK, and I was like, all right, this makes sense. This is good.
Cool. So what I want to know is, obviously we are British. Pickup trucks are kind of a thing over here, but obviously nothing like they are in America. And the big question I was trying to answer, is it a truck? Does it do the trucky things? Tesla are very keen to tell us it'll tow 5 tons. It's got a bigger bed than an F-150. It seems to tick all these boxes. But is anyone actually going to use it like a pickup truck?
Okay, great question.
It has a bigger bed than an F-150. If you get the 5.5-foot box, you can get the F-150 in other bed sizes as well. Just want to make sure folks have context there. The standard one is 5.5 feet. CYBERTRUCK is 6.
But is anyone actually going to use it like a pickup truck?
Okay, great question. So here's a dirty little secret about pickup trucks in the US is most people don't actually use them like pickup trucks. Shocker.
Stop
I
it.
know. They kind
Stop
of just
it.
drive them around. Yeah. So in that sense, the Cybertruck is very much one of the most exciting vehicles that happens to be a pickup truck that you can get. However, you will see, of course, lots of commentary online about the pickup truck specific features, of which it does have a few. You saw the outlets in the trunk. It's got 2 110s and a 240. It's got this nice thick liner. It's got sub-trunk space. It's got all these, lockdown systems. But I think the small percent of people who actually do tow things and haul things with their pickup truck are concerned about range. And so there's this funny little option that showed up on Tesla's website that they told us about, which is a range extender. So you might remember the original presentation promised like 500 plus miles of range on the biggest, baddest version of the Cybertruck. Turns out it's about 300 miles, which is right in line with every other EV pickup truck, but turns out those struggle with towing a lot of things for long distances. And so this option is just basically a large battery pack that gets added to the Cybertruck. It fits in the truck bed, connects to the systems, and adds about 120 miles of range.
For those that are not familiar, it's this area right here. So this one usually would have a flat bed. This thing right here is the extended battery, and the rumor is going to be somewhere between 500 and 1,000 pounds.
Of course, unloaded. If you're going to tow, maybe that's what you need to make it a reasonable truck for towing. But I think my take is Tesla realizes most people don't need all of that extra weight and all that extra battery. Driving dynamics are going to be sacrificed. So most people are totally cool driving it like a normal car that happens to be a pickup truck. And if you do actually need to do that hauling stuff, there's that interesting little option.
So what's doubly interesting there is that, so I 100% agree with him. I still think the people that are concerned about towing range, they have a legitimate concern because, listen, if you use your truck for that, the Cybertruck's probably not for you, at least not yet. But what's interesting about that is we also have to think about where is the EV market going to be in the next, say, 5 years. And I think Tesla's strategy, it's very clear that they think batteries are going to be at a premium. And so the last thing they want to do is overstuff cars with cells that most people will not use. So if you have a Cybertruck that is 500 miles of range, but there's a study that came out, I think it was Bloomberg or whoever it was, 20% of pickup truck owners use their towing capability often, and like 30% use the payload features often. The other like 70+% just use it for daily driving. So it doesn't make any sense to stuff 20 to 30% of your fleet, potentially even less, because they're not going to use it all the time, with way too many cells that you're not going to use, where you could have used those cells and build, say, 1/3 more Cybertrucks than you could have before, to a market that's about 4 million units per year in the United States, which is about how big the pickup truck market is. So like, why would you do that, right? And that's where the range extender becomes an option for people that want to take it farther. And the uptake of that will tell us how popular that really is going to be for folks that want to use electric vehicles for towing.
Yeah. It's a 50 kilowatt hour battery. I think they said it's essentially from a standard range Model 3. It's kind of the same size battery that will just bolt in the back and give you that extra range. But I just thought it was hilarious that one of the things they told me was that it takes like a certain size sheet of plywood, which is like a big thing for pickup owners. Oh, and there's enough power here that you can weld. I was like, is anyone welding on the back of their Cybertruck? Is anyone carrying plywood around?
But also, Jason, you know the market better than us in the US. Who is going to buy the Cybertruck?
Oh, Lamborghini buyers. I mean, first and foremost, this is like the best
I disagree with him, and I'm very excited to talk to him about that next week.
daily driver. If you have a Huracan and you need something to just assault your neighborhood in, it's this. But we had the same discussion about like, is this just really about its image, and is the functionality and inherent engineering in there just useless? The reality is when you start thinking about like, okay, could I take this to a construction site, right? So for example, that 4x8 sheet of plywood that can fit in the back, that is an important measure because that's the standard size for drywall and other building materials that we have. So my minivan can fit a 4x8 sheet of plywood, and that's a design brief that's built into all pickup trucks and everything else. But you start thinking about taking this to a construction site, and you think, well, construction sites are difficult to maneuver. There's kind of a lot going on always. And aside from the fact that you can't really see all that much out of the Cybertruck, the maneuverability and the dent proofness and all the storage and the power available at the back, plus the truly lockable bed, makes me wonder, like, I'm really curious to see this, but I think some pros will actually use it in construction gigs. Like all pickup trucks, the vast majority of people are going to use it to take their kids to school and then go to the grocery store because America's weird. But
Yeah.
And something else there. So I agree with him there. I think the uptake from the worker crowd will be bigger than a lot of people think. And then the other one, I saw a comment, and I want to actually deep dive this in a different video, where somebody that works very close, they work in this sort of like trade environment where you have a lot of tradies, folks that are out there doing trade jobs, like, plumbing, electricians, lawn care folks. That person thinks that this is going to be gigantic in that market because it offers all those capabilities that a work truck offers, which is, hauling your stuff, plugging in, durability. But then the looking very unique piece of it is because, imagine the first electrician that shows up in your town or city that you're in, that, how all the electricians or plumbers or whatever have all their branding on their van or truck. Imagine the first one with the Cybertruck. Don't you think that business is going to get an outsized amount of attention because there's this freaking triangle running around with the company's branding? And if you make the color super obnoxious, how will people miss your company? Right? So from that perspective, at least for the first, say, 2 to 5 years until this thing becomes ubiquitous, people that potentially have the Cybertruck as trade workers or business owners theoretically will get outsized attention on the road, and the truck will also allow them to do what they need to do for the work site, just like any other pickup truck would. And if they're going to be still, say, 80% of the time at the work site, and they have on-site charging there, just 240-volt plugs, you don't even need a supercharger. Theoretically, your truck can charge while you work. So then charging never becomes an issue either, right? Just so much there that I would love to explore as the weeks go along. This is what this channel is about exploring this stuff. So it's fascinating. Yeah.
Although I reckon if you're a foreman at a building site and you rock up in the new tri-motor Cybertruck, your employees are not going to like you.
There will be
it's a bit show off.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah, but it doesn't matter if they throw their tools at it; it's not going to dent it, right? What was the result of? Did you kick it? I know, Jason, that you smashed a hammer against it, but is that a gimmick, or is that something that we actually need on all cars? Is to be that?
I mean, the whole bulletproof thing is kind of a gimmick, because what's the point in having bulletproof steel when you don't have bulletproof glass, right? I think the bulletproofness of it was a side effect and not really the primary reason for doing that. But there is we wailed on that thing as hard as we could with a hammer, and so I had asked Tesla if we could shoot it, and they said yes. And so we got guns. We had a marksman coming, and but it wound up being an insurance issue. But the track the track agreed to let us shoot the thing. I mean, it was insane, and it all fell apart at the end. And I said, "Look, can we just at least hit it with a sledgehammer?" And Tesla was like, "Yeah, sure, okay." And I said, "Well, how big of a sledgehammer can we use? Because, to be honest, I don't want to dent the damn thing. I don't want to repeat performance of what happened 4 years ago." And they said, "Oh, we'll just give you we'll supply you with the hammer." And I thought, "Oh Christ, it's going to be this big. It's going to weigh as much as a piece of paper,
made of foam."
And we're just going to go dink and ruin it. It was a sand-filled dead blow hammer that we railed on that thing as hard as we could, and we did scuff it a little bit. And if you looked right on the hardest hit that we got, which was just at the corner of the leading edge of the hammer, we made a tiny little ripple. But I mean, that hit would have ripped a door panel of any other car in half. It was a full swing hit. It was unbelievable. I mean, it's not really a gimmick. So, you know, for someone who hates parking my cars in the city because of all the door dings and other stuff I get, that's a benefit.
Yeah, this is the
Yeah, and then the other thing that they really showcased in the Haggerty video is that structural, I mean, maybe it is an exoskeleton after all, is that they don't even need a B pillar, which is if you're in your car, the A pillar is sort of like the pillar in front of you when you're in the driving. It's the one that's like in front of you on the sides. The B pillar is the one right behind your head, and the C pillar is usually out there behind the people's heads in the back seat. They don't even really need a B pillar because the structural design of the exoskeleton allows them to absorb big impacts on the side of the truck. And so that is because of that exoskeleton, that shell that the truck has, which in theory has allowed it to save weight because you don't need that structural piece in between the A and the C pillar, between the front and the back of the car, to give you that integrity for safety, for crashes.
Your first vehicle, I would happily park in the city.
Good luck.
I'll say that.
Marquez,
Right.
which so hang on a minute. So Joe Rogan got a crossbow. You got a dead blow hammer. Marquez, what do they give you?
An iPhone.
Rocket launcher?
No, I got to deal with it, and I was just driving it around. I was like, look, this isn't my review. I'm not gonna try to destroy it now, but when I do get one for a while, I will definitely try some stuff. I also do think like probably shooting something on YouTube is like kind of tough for the YouTube algorithm to adjust for, so you're thinking about just hitting it with stuff.
Thinking like a YouTuber.
it's a
My
thing.
worry is
But
what our owners going
I
to do.
will have it for longer.
What our owners
there
gonna
will,
do.
well, there will be YouTubers who do crazier things.
Yeah. Wow. So Marquez, big question for you. You put a deposit down in 2019. Is that right? I mean, you're still waiting
That's
for your
right.
Roadster as
Yeah.
well. Are you going to stick with it? You going to buy one?
Yeah. So the philosophy behind it was we're actually going to use it as a work truck, and this is why I have a Rivian R1T now. Is when we go shoot car videos and we have our little rig, which is built onto a tow hitch, and we like control it remotely from the inside of the truck. We're driving around trying to keep it low key, and the Rivian turns out is perfect for that. So the thought behind the Rivian, well, actually, we ordered the Cybertruck first, and then the Rivian turned out to be shipping earlier, so we just switched and got the Rivian. But the question for me is, will this be a better work truck than the Rivian? And I'm not so sure. I think it's kind of a combo of highs and lows. The highs being it's more maneuverable, it's faster, and it's bigger, so we can fit more stuff in the back and get tripods in there and all that sort of stuff. But the downside is it is more high key and very visible. And we drive that Rivian tow hitch rig past like groups of people on suburban sidewalks, and they don't even blink at it. They don't even look at it. But I don't know if I'll be able to do that with a Cybertruck rig. So
I wonder how long. Yeah, I wonder how long. Because we were talking about the design. You know, right now it's just this.
That's a fascinating point, right? Because in some workspaces, that's clearly for Marquez, that's a negative, because if they're trying to, get on with their day and do work, you can't do it when there's a flock of people around you looking at it and freaking interrupting you at what you're trying to do. But again, if you're a tradie or you're somebody who uses their truck as a work truck and you brand it so that it's also a marketing and advertising tool on the road, then in theory, the Cybertruck is super preferable over an R1T. So it's like the different use cases for the truck is fascinating to hear.
This magnet of attention. Is that going to wear off? When there's 100,000 of these on the road, are people just going to chill out and accept it as part of the landscape? And what are we going to think in 5 years' time? In 5 years' time, are we going to look at this and go, "Oh man, what's that thing?" Or is it going to look crazy until the end of time?
Yeah, Jason, what do you think?
I mean, for those of us old enough to have been around for some other pretty impressively new-looking cars, I remember Audi R8. I got run off the road every 48 seconds driving that car because it just looked like a spaceship. And now it looks entirely conventional. And now, let me not compare an R8 to the Cybertruck in terms of like wow factor, but every time we've seen cars from an R8 to a new Civic that was nuts to everything else, it just becomes normal. I think we'll always look at this as not a triumph of automotive design. I don't think it's particularly pretty, but I think it'll just become so commonplace. If Tesla's production is ramped up to the point where we do see them all over, we'll be so used to it that we won't notice it any more than we notice a
let me finish.
Bangle Butt 7 Series.
So I see where he's coming from, that the Cybertruck will start to look normal, but seeing it on the road against other vehicles. So I saw it in my area driving around over the weekend, a couple days after the delivery event. I'm in the Austin area. And I saw it against other cars, and I saw it parked against other cars. I saw it driving on a highway against other cars. I think it will make every other car look like old news by comparison. So we'll get used to the Cybertruck, and then we're going to be looking around to other cars and be like, wow, what the hell is that? So it's like the period when we transitioned from, let's say, horse and buggy to Model Ts, Ford Model Ts in the automobile, and people went like, I'm sure they were looking at the horse and buggy like, oh, look at my buggy. It's incredible. Look at how beautiful my horse is. And then like 5 years down the road, everybody's like, why the hell do you have a horse and buggy? What is that thing? I think it's going to, at the very least, it will change the design language of some vehicles. But the engineering to make that design language requires a ton of innovation and a ton of forward thinking and a ton of new practices that I'm struggling to think how legacy automakers will be able to replicate that kind of look so that their products do not look out of date in comparison to the Cybertruck. And if Tesla does reach that 200 to 250,000 units per year, you damn well know this thing's going to be freaking everywhere. And the last thing an automaker wants is to have their products look inferior from the get-go versus other vehicles just by looking at them, right? So I agree with him, but I think the flip side is that it's going to make every other car look completely out of date by comparison. I could be wrong. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.
And I mean, Tesla's appeal to this kind of tech audience, this kind of younger kind of tech lovers markets. Do you think the Cybertruck will still do that? It's kind of as Jason said, the Lamborghini for a new generation, the Countach for this century.
Yeah, it does still feel like, and especially because the price is still high, it does kind of feel aspirational for a lot of people. Like, I remember when it first got announced, when they started racking up all these tons and tons of pre-orders. When you get that much interest in it, some fraction of those people, it's their first time ever buying an electric car, it's their first time ever buying a Tesla, and for a lot of them, it's their first time ever buying a truck. And this was also true about F-150 Lightning. So I think it gathers lots of interest from new people who originally weren't interested and they just saw it and were like attracted to it. I think that's true about the Cybertruck. I think that's still going to be true for people into tech. It's still expensive. It's still aspirational. It's just way more interesting now that we actually know what it's about.
Yeah. Well, look, guys, we'll leave it there. That's been absolutely fascinating. I think we agreed on some things, disagreed on others, but I think we can all agree that it's testament to the engineers and designers who actually got this thing through to production when Elon Musk came in and said, yeah, let's just build that in 2019. And they went, okay, let's figure this one out. And they have figured it out, which I was kind of blown away by.
Wait, hold on. So is this a success? Like, is the Cybertruck a success as a project, do you think? Jason, give us your thoughts on it, final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, taking my own personal opinion out of this, and I think that's my job as a journalist, right? Doesn't matter whether I like it or not. You had something that captured the world's attention on a stage, that 1 million people plunked down their own money for a pre-order, and all Tesla had to do was get that thing out the door, and they would have sold a bunch of them. But instead, reinvented how a pickup truck or a vehicle is constructed, from the aluminum extrusions to the castings, to the structural battery pack, to the exoskeleton, completely redid the way the internal vehicle architecture is with the first ever fully 48-volt system, completely reinvented steering with drive-by-wire, and completely reinvented, there's another thing, I don't even remember, they completely redefined how a truck needed to be built. And then smash the 0 to 60 record, the quarter mile record, the efficiency record, and all the rest of the stuff. I think it has to be seen as an engineering triumph. And when you have this much interest in something, it's already a success. Even if Elon lately has been making it pretty difficult to be on board with him.
Yeah, +1 to all of that, and there's also the whole background of just how many times we see a prototype car or like a one-off EV model that just gets built, which is the easy thing to do, and that never makes it to the point that we're at now, which is spinning up actual production and starting to ship the thing. So just getting to the end of that line and starting to ship them, I think makes it some level of a success. And now we'll just see how far we get from here.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. And actually, I in the feature I wrote for the magazine, I was just straight up. I said, look, I love the way it looks. I love the fact that it makes people angry. But I just think it looks so different. It takes design convention, just tears it up, throws it out the window, wheezes on the ashes, sets fire to it. It's it just doesn't care. It just doesn't care what you think. It just does something completely different. And I do like that about it. The only caveat is they've got it out the door. They delivered 15 trucks yesterday or however many it was. Next big challenge. I think Elon on the Joe Rogan podcast was talking about manufacturing. He was like, just building one car or a handful of them is easy. Building 250,000 a year. Like he said 10,000 processes. Only one of them has to go wrong, and then you gotta fix it. So I think they've got a long road, a long ramp up road, but he said that they should be there by 2025. We'll see. But look, to even get to this point is a hell of an achievement.
Well, I'm just annoyed you've all driven it. And I have to say, well done everybody and all your content creation and making. I know it's never easy, but I've got a whole weekend of CYBERTRUCK.
Yeah, hands up. I haven't actually watched either of your videos yet. Not because I don't want to, but because we woke up, came in, we've been podcasting all day, and I just haven't had a chance. So I'm going to go and get a cup of tea, put my feet up, and yeah, I'll send you marks out of 10.
Enjoy. We'll do the same.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Top Gear. If you want to watch this video for yourself, this is Tesla Cybertruck Deep Dive featuring Marques Brownlee and Jason Cammisa, Top Gear channel. It came out earlier this morning. Thank you so much for joining me for this live reaction. Hadn't watched the video before. And yeah, so let's go ahead. I'll give you my overall thoughts, and then we'll do some Q&A in the comment section below. Real quick, I want to give a shout out to Art. Thank you so much for becoming a member. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. So yeah, fascinating discussion. I think I highly recommend everybody, if you haven't yet, watch the individual reviews from each one of these folks. In addition to CarWow wasn't part of this discussion, but they did another phenomenal interview as well. So CarWow, MKBHD, Marques Brownlee's channel, Jason Cammisa from Haggerty, and Top Gear. They each did an interview or a review of the Cybertruck. So, some new information in this discussion. I think my big takeaway from this discussion is that car enthusiasts and tech reviewers alike, at least in the small sample size that we have, it seems like we have a unanimous agreement that this vehicle is a success, is performing really well for what folks were looking for it to do, at least when they were reviewing the vehicle. Especially what I'm most fascinated by is Top Gear and Jason Cammisa from Haggerty's reaction that they saw this vehicle from a car enthusiast lens, because Top Gear and Haggerty are both big car enthusiast publications, so they mostly deal with gas cars. And they saw this truck and they were hearkening back to these legendary vehicles like the Countach and the LMMO2. And hearing them talk a little bit more in depth about their feelings, I think really it's all coming together that, hey, it's going to be very hard to see this thing not do really well. And so the question becomes, is it going to be a thing where they're going to sell 100 to 200,000 units per year, which from that standpoint would mean you have this car that's going to completely change the way cars look over the years, because they'll be selling 1,000 times more than a comparable Countach or LMO02 or R8 because of how affordable they are compared to those cars? Or are we going to have a situation where this thing's going to completely disrupt the trucking market, and we're going to have to talk about Cybertruck potentially being the best-selling truck in the world, potentially beating the F-150 years down the line? So that's where I'm landing. It's like one of those two. It seems like it's hard to believe that this truck is not going to be a roaring success for the company. So now we have to wait and see how quickly Tesla can ramp it up to 100, 200, 250,000 units per year, how quickly they can introduce the more affordable models, the $80,000 model, the $60,000 model, and then as the years go by, potentially even lower the prices as the EV cost curve comes down and batteries become more affordable to purchase and to manufacture, and electric vehicles become more affordable to manufacture, and you get the supply chain ramped up. This truck is not going to be $100,000 for, I think, more than a year's time. It's all really dependent on how much demand there is out there, but I would expect this truck sometime starting next year, where you're going to be able to buy the $80,000 version and potentially the cheaper one soon thereafter. So pretty fascinating stuff. And yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts. So drop some of your comments, questions in the comment section below. We'll do a little bit of Q&A on this special Friday stream. Nice stream, Miss Bahi. Thanks, Smith. Freaking Matt giving me a tough time. Matt Smith, shout out. Look at how ugliest face I've ever seen. All right, Michael, can Cybertruck tame Texas drivers? Well, living in Texas, I think that's going to be an impossible feat. Texas drivers will do whatever they want. But I can tell you that being in pickup country, I do think this truck is going to be liked by a lot of people. Talking to all the locals, they're very proud of Tesla coming to their state and already creating a lot of jobs. There's a ton of Teslas already on the road in the area that I live in. So I think the Cybertruck is going to become quite common very soon around my parts. So I'm excited to see that. And I'm excited to take mine and, show it around once I get mine, hopefully sooner rather than later. We'll see. Bro, you're lucky. You're going to be lucky for this truck to be even made in a couple of years. I mean, technically, the first ones already were delivered. Yeah, this is sort of, we're talking about the initial reaction of the of the Top Gear folks when they were talking to people. They're already being made. So like they're doing deliveries this weekend, I believe, to more folks. They've opened up the configurator to more people, so that people can take delivery. It's going to be a slow burn. For me, it might take a year or two for sure, but we're going to start seeing them on the road a lot sooner than a lot of people think. At least, all it takes is like one or two Cybertrucks in, say, New York or Florida for people to be like, what the hell is this thing? I've never even knew this thing would existed. So yeah. 60 and 80 are not more affordable. Yeah, they're more affordable than 100,000, but 100% take your point that it's not an affordable vehicle. I do think what's interesting though is if you look at the pickup truck market, the average selling price for a pickup truck in the United States, at least, say the F-150, the Silverado, the Ram 1500, the average sticker price for these cars is somewhere around the $60,000 to $70,000 mark. So the rear wheel drive and the dual motor are directly in that market. And if you tack on the $7,500 EV tax credit, which is going to start being a point of sale, so you're going to be able to reduce your payments by that amount starting next year, then all of a sudden you're talking about a dual motor Cybertruck for $72,500 plus any state incentives that you have, which might make it cheaper than the average F-150, not even Lightning, just the average F-150 that's sold in your area. Plus you get the savings from not having to operate a gas vehicle because you're not paying for gas, plus much less maintenance because you don't have an engine, you don't have to replace the brakes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You don't really have to worry about panels, right? Because you have the stainless steel outer body. So fascinating stuff. James, big supporter of the channel. Thank you so much. Did you see that video with the carbon fiber rims that weigh 28 pounds less per tire? Greetings from Canada. Giddy up. I haven't, but that sounds fascinating. I'm going to have to go check that out. Thank you so much for your question. I'm going to make sure I find that. Hadouken, thank you so much for your support, brother. That's why they have the little symbol next to their name. Why do you think there is no Tesla branding on the Cybertruck? Because I don't think it needs it. I think from the perspective of Tesla, if you really think about, they always harp on this thing, the best part is no part. Why put a Tesla logo on the on the truck when it's already very obvious what it is. You don't have to pay that, dollar for that Tesla badge up front and $1 for a Tesla badge at the back. So you're saving $2 there. But I think the more important thing is, at least from the beginning, Tesla is very much thinking of this vehicle as a halo product. So meaning that it's something it's really trying to stand out versus, it's an aspirational thing. People will look at it and it's going to bring attention to the rest of the brand. And if you just look at the truck, I don't think you need anything else, because the truck is so striking already that you're going to go online and look for the vehicle, and all you're going to see is CYBERTRUCK, and then Tesla is just going to show up along with that truck. So I think it's more of a branding exercise more than anything. I would love to hear other people's opinions on this, but I don't think it doesn't need it. You look at the truck, it looks so different from everything else. It really just speaks to how unique this product is that it doesn't even need a Tesla brand on the CYBERTRUCK. The Ford Taurus was really futuristic in the 80s. That's why it was in RoboCop, but now it looks dated AF. The same will eventually happen to CYBERTRUCK. Yeah, for sure. I mean, 40, 50 years in the future, sure. But I think the short-term to medium-term implications of the attention this truck is going to bring to the brand, I think is something we should talk about. Because again, if you think about electric vehicles, this CYBERTRUCK isn't even being discussed as an electric vehicle. It's being discussed as a bananas-looking truck that happens to be electric. And so think about what that does to the overall conversation of what it means to own a sick car, or what it means to own a vehicle that really stands out. So it's not really catering to the, I'm buying this because it's an electric crowd. It's like, I'm buying this because it's freaking sick, or because it really fits my needs. So I think that's something that's important to keep in mind as well. But that's a good call. That's a good comment. No brand is way cooler. It's going to be tough to argue that. The other thing that I found fascinating too at the end of that interview was Jason made a comment around this thing is an incredible thing. The CYBERTRUCK is an incredible feat of engineering. It's going to, of course, it should be called a success, even though Elon Musk is making it harder to like him. What's interesting there, and then Marquez said +1 to all of that. What's interesting about that comment there is that regardless of how you personally feel about Elon Musk and sort of his recent rhetoric and all the drama surrounding him or whatever, what's interesting is that this vehicle and the product that his company is making, the team of Tesla, it's decoupled. It's decoupled from what people think of him personally. I think by the majority of people, there's still going to be a small percentage of the population that will look at a Tesla. And when I say small, I mean really small, especially within the context of the global population. I think, a specific political party that's, part of a certain geographical area in the United States might, hold their nose up and say, okay, this thing sucks, and they have every right to do that. But I think it really showcases that in the end, people respect things that are impressive, and people in the end will look to fill their lives up with things that make them happy and make sense. And they're not so much worried, I think, in the long term about where somebody might lean politically or what somebody might be saying that's controversial. That's my opinion. But I sometimes hear that as like a thing that's going to cause damage to let's say this brand specifically in the long term. And I just don't see that. And I think if that would have happened, if that was true, then something like the Tesla Model Y wouldn't be the best-selling car in the world in 2023. You wouldn't have the Tesla CYBERTRUCK dominating headlines freaking everywhere. You wouldn't have car enthusiasts looking at the truck and being like, wow, this thing's freaking insane, right? So my opinion on that one. Has anyone seen the 48-volt battery? Is it off the shelf or is it designed for CYBERTRUCK? My guess is going to be that the 48-volt battery will be off the shelf over time. Tesla's the first brand that's going to be using a 48-volt battery. So expect it to be a lot smaller than a 12-volt, if I were to guess. Maybe not. But I'm sure it's going to be off the shelf. They've partnered with a supplier. And as more and more cars start moving to a 48-volt architecture, that supplier should start selling those batteries to those folks as well. I would be surprised if Tesla becomes the 48-volt supplier, but who knows? They've done crazier things in the past. So, but that's how I think it's going to play out. Let's see. Ever seen that bumper sticker? We bought this before we found out Elon was crazy. No, I haven't seen that. I'm going to guess a lot of those are going to be in California. Shout out California. Gorgeous state. Let's do a couple more. I hope you get your truck sooner rather than later. I hope so too. I'm keeping my eyes open on when they're going to open up the configurator for me. If I were to guess, it's probably going to be sometime. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, probably sometime in the middle of next year, just the way things are trending. If it's sooner, great. If it's later, that's okay too. But if I were a betting man, I'm going to guess summer of 2024. And I'm pretty optimistic with these things, so it's probably going to be winter or spring of 2025. We'll see. We'll see. Do you think Farley, this is Jim Farley from Ford's CEO, is talking to Elon behind the scenes? 100%. I think they had a recent, based on their recent space that they did on X, they seem very cordial to each other. It seemed like they were already talking quite a bit about stuff. And it's clear that Ford is trying to emulate a lot of the things that Tesla's doing because they view Tesla as a leader in electric vehicles, and they openly said this. And I would not be surprised if they're talking behind the scenes about a lot of different things, some of which could include, there was this whole thing in the Haggerty interview or the review where they did where they covered how Tesla sent how to build a 48-volt vehicle manual to every automaker, and Jim on X confirmed that they received it and they thanked Tesla for doing that. And Elon said, "You're welcome." So it looks like those two are definitely working on stuff together. And the one rumor that was out there was that Ford is going to potentially sign a licensing deal with Tesla to use their full self-driving hardware and software for their vehicles. And they were the first ones to announce their move to Tesla's Plug, the North America charging standard. So there's clearly already a lot of stuff going there. So I continue to say that Ford, out of most of the legacy automakers, they are definitely trying to do the most to transition to this new type of vehicle, and partnering with Tesla, I think, is a very smart move because clearly, if if you don't believe this, you have every right to not believe this. But it's clear and obvious that Tesla's technology and engineering is a cut above everybody else's. And I think this vehicle proves that, the Cybertruck, based on all the reviews we're getting so far. So it would be very smart for them to do that. All right. When will you have your interview with Marquez? I don't know if that will ever happen, but if for some reason he's watching the channel, of course, he's more than welcome to jump on. I will have Jason on the channel next week. And if for some reason Marquez is watching this, of course, it would be an honor to have you on the podcast to have a discussion. So yeah, okay. We'll call it there. If you enjoyed this, throw me a like, subscribe. If you want to support the channel, links in the description below, and we'll see you on the next one. I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Thank you so much. Take it easy. Bye-bye.